I stood in that HOA meeting, shaking, holding papers that proved the queen of our neighborhood had been stealing from us all. When I read them out loud, every neighbor gasped. Karen's empire cracked and the $300 fine on my Halloween skeleton began the real war. I still remember the sound, her voice like nails on glass. Karen, the HOA queen of Pinewood Estates, screamed across my driveway. She pointed at my skeleton like it was a crime. Neighbors peeked through blinds, porch lights flickered on, and my kids froze. Before we continue, please drop a like and comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Australia, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. I stood there in disbelief, holding a box of candy. She said the skeleton mocked real tragedy. My chest burned. Karen's words echoed, "You'll regret this, Harold. We keep standards here." She slammed a clipboard into my hands. A fine, $300. For bones and plastic. For laughter my kids had begged me for. The kids' eyes watered, confused why Halloween joy turned bitter. My wife whispered, "Don't fight, Harold." But something inside me snapped. I'd worked too hard to be humiliated publicly. The skeleton wasn't offensive. It wore a cowboy hat, boots, and held a plastic beer bottle. A goofy rancher. People had laughed earlier. But suddenly, laughter became whispers against me. Karen's husband stood behind her, smirking like he enjoyed the show. My fists clenched. But I swallowed the anger, because in Pinewood, the HOA ruled stronger than sheriffs. They controlled everything. I ripped the fine notice from her hand. She gasped, clutching her pearls. "You'll pay, Harold?" she hissed. Every porch light on the street burned brighter, like courtroom spotlights over me. I looked at my kids, their costumes sagging. A skeleton cowboy ruined their night. My heart ached. Karen strutted away, victorious. But in her shadow, I began planning revenge. That was decades ago. I was only 45, still learning pride is dangerous when money's tight. But even now, at 70, I still feel the echo of her scream. And what happened next? It wasn't just about candy or skeletons. It was about power, control, and how one Halloween night turned my family into prisoners of Pinewood Estates forever. Before that night of shouting, I never cared about the HO. I bought our house in Pinewood because it was quiet, clean, and supposedly safe for families. But Karen wasn't always a monster. At first, she welcomed us with banana bread and a fake smile. "Community matters here," she said. But her eyes always scanned, always judged. She ruled the HOA like a mayor nobody voted for. Every flower bed, every paint color, every trash can left out an extra hour, she noticed. And punished. Neighbors feared her. Kept my head down. I worked long hours at the auto shop. My wife, Clarissa, juggled teaching and raising the kids. We paid dues. We followed rules. But Karen never liked me. Maybe it was my truck, always greasy from work. Maybe it was my loud laugh. Or maybe she hated seeing my kids enjoy themselves freely. The first warning came in summer. A letter said my lawn was unprofessional. My grass grew 1 inch taller than regulation. I shrugged it off, but Clarissa whispered, "She's watching us." By September, we got 2 more notices. Trash cans visible. Improper mailbox flag. Small things, ridiculous things. Still, fines piled up. 200 here, 150 there. Always signed by Karen. I tried talking to neighbors. Most avoided my eyes. One old man muttered, "Fight her and you'll regret it." His porch light blinked twice like a warning before he shut the door. I laughed it off back then, pretending Karen was just a bored woman with too much time. But Clarissa saw the danger. "She'll find something bigger, Harold. She always does." And sure enough, October came. Pumpkins on porches. Spider webs hanging. Kids buzzing for candy. I thought maybe Halloween would be safe from Karen's reach. I had no idea how wrong. I bought the skeleton on clearance years earlier. 6 feet tall, cheap plastic joints, goofy grin. My kids loved it. They begged me every October, "Dad, bring him out." That year, I decided to dress him different. Not just a plain skeleton. I gave him cowboy boots, a straw hat, and a plastic beer bottle. He looked ridiculous, hilariously ridiculous. The kids laughed until they couldn't breathe. Even Clarissa cracked a smile, though she worried. "What if Karen says something?" she asked. I waved it off. "It's just Halloween, honey." I placed him by the oak tree in our yard. The street looked brighter instantly, like our silly cowboy skeleton brought life to Pinewood's stiff, polished lawns. For once, neighbors walked past. Some chuckled. A little boy across the street asked his dad if Skeleton Cowboy could protect them from ghosts. For an hour, joy actually existed here. Then, as the sun dipped, I saw her blinds twitch. Karen's face appeared, tight as a fist. She stared, unmoving, before disappearing into her perfect white house. My gut tightened. That night, my kids handed out candy proudly under the skeleton's shadow. Their laughter filled the yard. For a brief moment I thought maybe, just maybe, Karen would let it go. But as midnight neared, Clarissa found a note shoved under our doormat. "Remove immediately. Inappropriate. HOA standards violated." Signed, Karen. I just sank. My hands shook with fury. Clarissa begged me to take it down. But I refused. "It's harmless," I snapped. "If she wants a fight over plastic bones, let her come scream it herself." And the very next evening, she did. Porch lights. Neighbors whispering. Karen shrieking like Halloween was her personal battlefield. That skeleton became the spark that lit the fire of war. The following night, I was raking leaves when Karen stormed down her driveway like a sheriff. Clipboard in hand, pearls jangling, fury painted across her face. I knew trouble brewed. "Harold," she barked. "This is unacceptable." Her voice echoed across the cul-de-sac. Neighbors froze mid-step, like soldiers obeying a drill sergeant. Even dogs stopped barking. Everyone watched Pinewood's queen deliver judgment. She jabbed a finger at the skeleton. "Offensive. Tasteless. You're mocking real tragedies. I won't allow it." She waved her clipboard, paper shaking. I could already see the red letters. "Fine." I laughed bitterly. "It's a plastic skeleton, Karen. Kids love it." But Karen's face twisted. "Kids? You're teaching them disrespect. You don't belong in this neighborhood." The words stung worse than money. Clarissa rushed out, pleading, "Please, let's not do this here." But Karen smirked. She wanted the audience. Neighbors' blinds opened. Porch lights clicked on. Pinewood turned into a courtroom, and I was guilty. She shoved the paper into my chest. $300. Due immediately. Her tone was gleeful. Like this wasn't about rules. It was about breaking me in front of everyone. I ripped the paper in half. Gasps filled the air. Karen staggered back, clutching her pearls like I'd committed violence. Her husband stepped forward, whispering, "Careful, Harold. She always wins." My kids stood frozen in costumes, their candy buckets trembling. Their eyes begged me to stop, but my pride roared louder. I wouldn't bow to Karen. Not in public. Karen hissed, "This isn't over. Pay or lose your privileges." She marched back, triumphant. Porch lights dimmed one by one. The neighborhood judged me in silence. My reputation cracked. As my kids cried, Clarissa whispered, "You just painted a target on us." And deep down, I knew she was right. This fine wasn't punishment, it was the opening shot. The next morning, an email arrived. HOA violation unresolved. Late fees may apply. Karen's name glared at me from the bottom. My coffee went bitter in my mouth. Clarissa sighed, shoulders heavy. "We can't afford this, Harold." Bills were already stacked on the counter: car repairs, school supplies, electricity. 300 wasn't just money. It was groceries. It was survival. I told her I'd fight it. But Clarissa shook her head. "You can't fight Karen. She is the HOA." Her voice cracked, like she'd already accepted defeat before battle began. At work, I couldn't focus. Customers talked about tires, oil changes, spark plugs. All I heard was Karen's shriek. All I saw was my kids' disappointed faces. That night, neighbors avoided me. One couple crossed the street to dodge my wave. Another whispered while pointing at my house. Suddenly, I was the villain of Pinewood Estates. The skeleton still stood proudly by the oak. My kids begged me not to take it down. "Please, Dad, he's funny." Their hope was the only thing keeping me steady. But Clarissa stared out the window, silent. I knew she worried more about money than pride. She wanted peace, not war. And deep down, I feared losing her support. Then a letter came, official, stamped, threatening. Further refusal may result in property liens or suspension of community privileges. My stomach twisted. Karen wasn't bluffing. She was tightening the noose. I stood in the driveway that night, staring at the skeleton. I felt powerless, cornered. But rage kept whispering, "She humiliated you once. Don't let her win again." I decided then, I'd fight Karen on my terms. But fighting someone who holds power over your home is like lighting a match in a dry forest. Everything burns eventually. I refused to let Karen scare me. That weekend, I bought more decorations, pumpkins, fake cobwebs, orange lights. If she wanted a fight over a skeleton, I'd double down. Clarissa shook her head, pleading, "Harold, please, you're making it worse." But when the kids saw the lights glow across our porch, their eyes lit up brighter than any rule Karen could write. Neighbors slowed their cars, staring. Some smiled secretly. Others frowned, afraid to be seen enjoying rebellion. Pinewood wasn't festive anymore. It was a prison yard. Every decoration became a protest sign. Karen struck quickly. Another letter appeared. Halloween display exceeds regulation limits. Fine, $200. Due immediately. Her pettiness turned our holiday into debt. But I wasn't backing down. I marched to the HOA office Monday morning. Karen sat behind a desk like a judge. "Remove everything or face legal action," she sneered. Her confidence made me sick. "I pay my dues," I growled. "You don't own joy." Karen leaned forward, whispering so only I could hear, "I own you, Harold. Don't forget it." Her smile was venom. I slammed the door, leaving, papers shaking in my hand. Passers-by watched me storm out, and for once, I saw sympathy in their eyes. Maybe they hated her too. That night, Clarissa cried quietly, terrified of lawsuits. My kids huddled close, whispering if Karen would take our house away. I hugged them tight, pretending strength I didn't feel inside. The skeleton cowboy still stood strong, silly and proud. I looked at him and thought, maybe plastic bones could outlast Karen's fury. Maybe he was more than a decoration. Maybe he was defiance. But in the darkness, I noticed Karen's blinds. Wide open. Her pale face glowing behind the glass. Watching. Always watching. She wasn't done. No, she was just getting started. The morning after Halloween, our mailbox overflowed with letters. Not bills, complaints. Too scary. Too inappropriate. Against neighborhood values. My stomach churned. Karen had rallied the neighborhood against us. Clarissa read them aloud, voice breaking. "They're saying we embarrassed Pinewood, Harold." Each word stabbed deeper. I felt cornered. It wasn't just Karen anymore. It was an entire street pointing fingers. I walked outside, hoping for support. Mr. Halpern, the retired vet, avoided my wave. The Johnsons quickly pulled their kids inside. Even friends we'd barbecued with closed blinds as I passed. But then, as I turned back, I caught a whisper. "We're with you, Harold," a voice muttered. A young couple down the block smiled briefly, then hurried inside nervously. It hit me. People hated Karen, but fear silenced them. She ruled through shame. If you stood against her, you stood alone. That's how she stayed untouchable for years. That night, Clarissa begged again. "Take it all down. Please. I can't live like this." Her tears broke me. But pride burned hotter than fear. I shook my head. Suddenly, a rock slammed against our front window. The kids screamed. I ran outside, no one there. Just the echo of footsteps. Neighbors watching from dark porches, pretending ignorance. Clarissa held the kids tight, glaring at me. "This isn't about decorations anymore. You're putting us in danger." Her words cut, but I couldn't surrender. Not to Karen. Not now. I sat on the porch, staring at the skeleton cowboy. He looked ridiculous, yes, but somehow he became my line in the sand. My last stand against Pinewood's tyranny. From across the street, Karen stepped outside. She raised a wine glass, smirked, and mouthed 2 words across the silence: "You lose." My fists clenched. War was no longer optional. I couldn't sleep. Karen's smirk haunted me. Every creak of the house felt like her knocking. By dawn, I decided, if she wanted war, I'd fight differently. At work, I asked around. Turns out, other neighborhoods had their own Karens. Some collapsed under lawsuits, others crumbled when neighbors finally united. The key wasn't decorations. It was exposure. I started digging. HOA records, financial reports, complaint logs. Buried in the paperwork, I saw something: Karen reimbursing herself for administrative costs. Hundreds of dollars flowing quietly into her personal account. My pulse raced. If she could find me $300 for a skeleton, but secretly pocket money, maybe she wasn't queen, maybe she was thief. And thieves could fall. I reached out to the young couple who whispered support. Their names were Ezra and Talia. Nervous, they invited me in. "We've all suffered," Ezra admitted. "She fines everyone unfairly." They showed me letters, ridiculous fines for faded shutters, cracked driveways, even wind chimes too loud. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. Karen's empire wasn't built on fairness. It was built on fear. That night, I gathered evidence in a folder. Clarissa found me at the table, shaking her head. "You'll ruin us," she whispered. But when she saw the papers, she paused. "Is this real?" she asked. I nodded. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes besides fear: hope. Maybe Karen wasn't untouchable after all. Maybe truth could win. But exposing her meant risk. If I failed, she'd bury us deeper. If I succeeded, the whole neighborhood would turn. The skeleton cowboy was no longer my only weapon. I looked out the window. Karen's blinds glowed again, her shadow watching. But this time I smiled. Because finally, I had a secret she couldn't control. Saturday morning, Pinewood's monthly HOA meeting filled the clubhouse. Neighbors gathered, stiff and polite. Karen sat at the head table, clipboard ready, pearls shining, wearing that same smug smile. I walked in with my folder under my arm. Whispers spread instantly. Clarissa squeezed my hand, terrified. Ezra and Talia followed behind me. For once, I wasn't standing alone. Karen started with business as usual: lawn violations, trash schedules, dues increases. Her voice dripped with authority. People nodded, afraid to question. She thought this meeting would be another easy victory. When she called my name, expecting an apology, I stood. "Actually," I said, voice shaking but loud, "I have something to share." I opened the folder. Papers fluttered dramatically. Gasps filled the room. I read aloud: expense reimbursement, unauthorized. Administrative costs, unapproved. Total, thousands of dollars redirected. Neighbors shifted nervously. Karen's face drained white, then flushed red, panic cracking her perfect mask. She stammered, "That's standard procedure." But Ezra stood too, holding his own letters. "Really? You fined us $150 for a squeaky swing set. Meanwhile, you paid yourself from our dues." Talia added, "We all suffered. She's been stealing." Murmurs grew into voices. Neighbors compared notes aloud. Karen's fortress of silence collapsed. Fear turned into anger. For the first time, Pinewood looked at her with suspicion. Karen slammed her clipboard. "You'll regret this, Harold," she shouted, voice breaking. But her power slipped. The crowd wasn't with her anymore. They were with us. Finally, Clarissa squeezed my hand tighter, whispering, "You did it." I felt taller than the skeleton cowboy standing in my yard. Karen's reign cracked. But cracks don't end battles, they start floods. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Karen glared at me, eyes burning. She mouthed one final promise: "This isn't over." And I believed her. Because tyrants rarely surrender quietly. Karen didn't fall overnight. She clawed, screamed, threatened lawyers. But once neighbors saw her theft, her power slipped. By Christmas, she was voted out. By spring, she moved away. We never got our money back. The fine still hurt, the debt still weighed. But freedom was sweeter than revenge. Pinewood felt lighter. Kids laughed again. Decorations returned. Joy returned. The skeleton cowboy stood every October after that. He became a legend, our silent protest. Neighbors called him Sheriff Bones. Even Clarissa smiled, saying he kept Karen's ghost away. Years passed. My kids grew, left for college, built lives beyond Pinewood's fences. Clarissa's hair silvered. I retired from the auto shop. But Sheriff Bones always came out each fall. Sometimes, I'd sit on the porch, watching children laugh at him. Parents whispered the story, how one skeleton toppled a queen. And in their laughter, I felt healed. Karen never apologized. She never admitted defeat. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona, terrorizing another community. Maybe some fights never end. But here at least she lost. Looking back, I know pride nearly ruined me. But without standing up, we'd still be prisoners. Sometimes the smallest rebellion, plastic bones, a cowboy hat, becomes the spark others need. Now, at 70, I tell my grandkids the story every Halloween. They laugh eyes wide, begging to see Sheriff Bones. And I smile, because defiance lives in them too. Karen wanted silence. She wanted obedience. But what she created instead was legend. She shouted, she fined, she tried to break us. And all she left was her echo. And every October, when Sheriff Bones grins under the oak tree, I remember. We survived. We resisted. And sometimes, the silliest battles end up telling the most powerful truths.